fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
And welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well. Hello, you're watching Gravitas and I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's begin. On Gravitas tonight, we analyze the Bangladesh election results. While the BNP has passed the crucial litmus test, the next big test is to balance ties domestically with opposition Jamaat-e-Islami and across the border with India. More coming up on this tonight. And just weeks after the dramatic purge of Xi Jinping's top general, the CIA is now moving to capitalize on the discord. We get you all about the new video that targets informants within the Chinese military. Also, this will warm your heart. A dog who spent 10 years next to the grave of his buried owner has led Brazil to pass a new law, popularly now called the Grave Digger Law. This adorable story is coming up for you tonight. Bangladesh has delivered a historic verdict in the first national election since the 2024 uprising that toppled Sheikh Hasina and ended more than 15 years of Awami League dominance. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP, has now stormed back to power with a landslide 212 seats in the 299-member parliament. It is a comeback 2 decades in the making. For the BNP, this is more than just an electoral victory. It is political redemption. After years in the opposition, allegations of crackdowns and a long stretch out of office, the party has now repositioned itself as the vehicle of stability, economic recovery, and national reset. But this election, remember, is not just a single victory story. It is in many ways a story of 3 major victories. The first one is for the BNP, a sweeping return to power with 212 seats, a commanding majority that gives it a strong mandate to govern. with Tariq Rahman set to become the first male Prime Minister after 35 years, who returned to Bangladesh last year after 17 years in self-exile. The BNP's campaign strategy specifically aimed to capture the moderate and secular votes left vacant by the barred Awami League. By appealing to these voters, the BNP has now created a mandate that is explicitly seen as a rejection of Sharia law and theological extremism. The second victory comes from Jamaat-e-Islami. Although it did not overtake the BNP in this election, Jamaat and its allies secured between at least 77 seats, which is its best ever performance in a parliamentary election so far. For a party long marginalized and shadowed by its historical association with 1971, this marks a dramatic political resurgence. Jamaat attempted to rebrand itself as pro-uprising, promising justice-based governance and a more inclusive approach. It even fielded its first Hindu candidate. Jamaat contested these polls as the principal force within an 11-party alliance that also included the National Citizen Party, or the NCP, which is a group led by youth activists who had played a key role in the 2024 uprising. While it raised questions about the counting process after the results were declared, the numbers themselves signal momentum. Jamaat has emerged as a formidable parliamentary force. With its base energized, this performance lays the groundwork for future expansion. The challenge now shifts to the BNP on how to govern effectively while checking Jamaat's ideological narrative and preventing further consolidation of its support base ahead of the next electoral cycle. On to the third major victory now. That belongs to the Election Commission of the country. This was the first national poll since the 2024 student-led uprising and the 18-month interim administration headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. The vote was widely seen as the first truly competitive and relatively free election in nearly 2 decades. With significantly fewer incidents of violence and a broad participation base, the poll body has now regained a degree of public credibility at a critical moment in the country's democratic transition. The women's vote might have emerged as a decisive factor. With over 62 million female voters in Bangladesh, the BNP's social welfare promises and mainstream platform resonated strongly. 6 out of the 7 elected women candidates are from the BNP and its allies. Despite attempts to soften its image, Jamaat failed to nominate a single woman for general seats, a gap that limited its appeal among female voters. Jamaat-e-Islami's campaign had attracted controversy as well over regressive comments being made by Shafiqur Rahman on women's rights and employment. Nonetheless, Jamaat's 77 seats represent a historic showing for a party that had previously never won more than 12% of the vote. As these results became clearer, congratulatory messages began pouring in. India was among the first to respond, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi extending his congratulations to the BNP on its decisive win. With BNP's victory, India's long-standing strategic comfort with the Awami League is now over. For more than a decade, remember, New Delhi worked closely with the government of Sheikh Hasina on security cooperation, cross-border connectivity, and counter-terror frameworks. That era has now closed. The BNP government led by Tariq Rahman will have to balance multiple pressures, domestic coalition dynamics, economic expectations, and the growing ideological assertiveness of Jamaat, which now enters the parliament with its strongest ever numbers. Shifting our focus now, the United States is sending a second aircraft carrier to the waters near Iran. Reports suggest that the USS Gerald R. Ford is on its way to the Arabian Sea. President Donald Trump has issued yet another warning to the Iranians, saying that if Tehran does not make a deal, the result will be, quote, very traumatic. But Iran isn't without its own pointy ends. Amid the rising threats, Iran's Yemeni allies, the Houthis, have now begun reactivating their missile bases. Here's a report for more details.
The Houthi rebel group in Yemen has begun deploying its missile launchers. Reports say that they're being relocated to the Red Sea coast to better target crucial shipping lanes. Missile launchers are being moved from strongholds in the inland Amran Governorate to the coastal Hajar region. And according to the reports, they are being positioned in areas with extensive tree cover to camouflage them from surveillance drones and aircraft. This indicates that the Houthis are preparing to strike without warning and once again target commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The Houthis began attacking ships in the Red Sea in 2023 after the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza began. This crippled the trade route, which at its peak used to cater to 12 to 15% of all global shipping. The Houthis used their missiles to attack both ships and Israel itself. Houthi attacks on Israel led to both Tel Aviv and Washington bombing Yemen. But the Houthis still maintain their arsenal, including Mandab-class missiles, modified Iranian Noor missiles, and even land-to-sea Quds cruise missiles. Reactivating them makes West Asia even more volatile, even as the US and Iran are engaged in tense negotiations. Iran and the US have already held one round of talks aimed at a nuclear deal. But ahead of the second round, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu paid US President Donald Trump a visit. Netanyahu has departed the US, saying that he thinks Trump is creating the conditions for a good deal. And this is what Trump said after the meeting.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me.
Reports say that the US has deployed a second aircraft carrier to West Asia. This time, it's the world's largest carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford. It's the same aircraft carrier that Trump had stationed near Venezuela before carrying out Operation Absolute Resolve to capture Nicolas Maduro. Now, the USS Gerald R. Ford is being redeployed to West Asia, where it will join the USS Abraham Lincoln. So, Iran will soon be in striking distance of two American aircraft carriers. Is this just more gunboat diplomacy by Trump, or are the talks just a smokescreen? It seems both Iran and the Houthis are gearing up for the worst-case scenario. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
India's IT sector is staring at its worst week since the pandemic. A sharp global sell-off in technology stocks triggered by fresh concerns around artificial intelligence. India's IT stocks led by Tata Consultancy Services Limited and Infosys Limited are set to lose about $50 billion in market capitalization for their worst week since the pandemic. India's technology heavyweights are under pressure. The Nifty IT index is down nearly 9.4% for the week, which is its steepest decline since March 2020 when COVID rattled global markets. At one point on Friday, the index plunged more than 5% before trimming losses. The benchmarks BSE, Sensex and Nifty are down nearly 1.2% each, but its stocks have borne the brunt of investor anxiety. And what's the trigger? Well, it's artificial intelligence. In early February, US-based AI firm called Anthropic launched Claude Cowork, which is an advanced AI suite capable of autonomously executing multi-step workflows across legal, finance, and sales functions. Think a colleague at work, but that is not a human. It is for non-developers and designed to handle multi-step workflows like file management, document drafting, and research. So when Claude Cowork was launched, it raised alarm bells for India's outsourcing giants that operate on a headcount-based billing model. The fear is simple. If AI can automate core back office functions, then demand for traditional IT services may shrink. Investors do say that the real impact of Anthropic's shock on the IT sector is yet to be ascertained. Truly, the sell-off in the Indian IT followed a tech-led rout on Wall Street. The Nasdaq fell more than 2% overnight as investors reassessed the hundreds of billions being poured into AI infrastructure and questioned when returns might materialize. However, some analysts are urging caution. JP Morgan says that it is overly simplistic to assume that AI can automatically replace enterprise-grade software services. The brokerage argues that its IT service firms remain the plumbers of the technology ecosystem, integrating, customizing, and maintaining complex systems. Even if AI rewrites software, enterprises will still need services to make those systems function reliably. And market strategists in India also echo that sentiment. They warn that panic selling at this stage may be premature, especially since the long-term commercial impact of the so-called AI shocks is still unclear. Interestingly, some believe that the unwinding of the global AI trade could benefit India in the long run. Industry experts say that last year's global rally was heavily concentrated in AI-first companies, an area where India is still emerging. If capital rotates away from speculative AI bets, traditional services exporters could stabilize. On Friday, Asian stock markets fell following another tech-led plunge on Wall Street as investors reassessed their vast AI investments. Tokyo's Nikkei fell 1.2%, Hong Kong dropped 1.7%, Shanghai declined 1.3%. However, chip makers bucked that trend, with companies that are tied to AI infrastructure posting gains. So it was a rotation rather than a wholesale tech collapse. The attention now turns to US inflation data, which could shape expectations for Federal Reserve rate cuts. Stronger than expected US jobs data this week has already pushed back hopes of near-term easing. Ultimately, whether this AI-driven sell-off marks a turning point or just another correction will depend on how quickly companies adapt to the next phase of technological change. Well, moving on, Xi Jinping's military purge, which has intensified in recent times, has now raised questions about the state of affairs in China's military. The United States is now seeking to capitalize on potential disgruntlement within the People's Liberation Army. The Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, has released a Mandarin language video on social media platforms, which features a fictional mid-level Chinese military officer. He's seen sending files from his laptop to the CIA at night from a parked car before sneaking out of a military facility. In this video, he says, and I quote, "Any man qualified to lead us is deemed a threat and unceremoniously removed." This is a reference to the sweeping shakeup of China's military. Remember, more than 20 senior military commanders in China have been investigated, sidelined or removed since mid-2023 as part of a broader anti-corruption campaign. The country's top general, Zhang Yuxia, along with General Liu Zhenli, has also been sacked for alleged corruption and disloyalty. The military purge has resulted in a huge vacuum in the Central Military Commission, which is China's supreme military leadership body. The 7-man body has now been left with just 2 members. Xi, who is himself the chair, and the newly promoted vice chairman, Zhang Shengmin. This is the 4th such recruitment video targeting Chinese officials posted by the CIA since last year. The earlier videos that garnered millions of views contained information on how to contact the US spy agency via VPN and dark web. This is seen as an attempt to boost its informant network and intelligence connection on China. But China is not taking this lying down. The country's foreign ministry has issued a response saying that it will take every possible measure to thwart sabotage activities by anti-national forces.
The US CIA released a video recently in the Chinese language to recruit Chinese military officers as spies. Does China have any response? China will take all necessary measures to resolutely combat infiltration and sabotage activities by external anti-China forces and firmly safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests. The anti-China forces' attempts will never succeed.
CIA's digital outreach dates back to 2022. It first put out a text-only video appealing to Russians. After the beginning of the Ukraine war, the US spy agency had intensified its efforts. For instance, in 2024, it released a Russian-language video seeking to woo patriotic Russians working in the intelligence community who may feel betrayed by corruption in elite circles. 2 years back, the US spy agency launched a drive to recruit informants in Iran and North Korea as well, considered tough for intelligence gathering given the high level of surveillance which these countries reportedly deploy to stamp out dissent. Now, China has also been under the scanner for its alleged attempts to spy on US soil. Last year, remember, the Trump administration decided to revoke visas of thousands of Chinese students, especially those having connections with the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. In July last year, America charged 2 Chinese nationals for allegedly photographing a naval base, arranging a secret cash drop, and attempting to recruit US military personnel who can assist Chinese intelligence. Back then, Beijing had rubbished these claims. Tensions between China and Japan have flared once again, but this time the issue is not surrounding a warship, fighter jet, or a missile test. It is regarding a fishing boat and a Chinese captain, and an arrest in disputed waters that could sharply escalate friction between the 2 Asian powers. On Thursday afternoon, inside Japan's exclusive economic zone near Yakushima Island, patrol vessels from Japan's fisheries agency intercepted a Chinese fishing boat. Now, according to Tokyo, the Chinese captain ignored repeated orders to stop, refused an onboard inspection, and tried to flee. Japanese authorities detained him shortly after.
The case is currently under investigation, but in order to prevent and deter illegal operations by foreign fishing vessels, we will continue to carry out enforcement activities with a firm and resolute stance.
The captain has been identified as 47-year-old Chinese national Zheng Nianli. 10 other crew members were on board. Their legal status remains unclear at the moment. But remember, this is the first time since 2022 that Japan has seized a Chinese fishing vessel. And it comes at a moment when relations between the 2 Asian powers are already on the edge. Beijing responded swiftly and urged Japan to abide by bilateral agreements.
We hope Japan will strictly abide by the China-Japan Fisheries Agreement, enforce the law impartially, and protect the safety and legitimate rights and interests of the Chinese crew members.
This incident is unfolding against a far more volatile backdrop. Earlier this week, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi secured a landslide election victory. During her campaigning, she promised a tougher line on China and pledged to expand Japan's defense budget. Beijing warned that reckless actions would invite what it called a resolute response, and the tensions don't stop at fishing boats. In December last, Japan reported that Chinese J-15 fighter jets operating from an aircraft carrier locked radar onto Japanese aircraft near Okinawa. Days later, Russian and Chinese bombers conducted joint patrols over the East China Sea, circling Japan. At the time, Tokyo summoned China's ambassador. Tensions have escalated, especially since the Kaichi said in November that Japan could intervene militarily if Taiwan faced an attack, a remark that further strained the fragile ties between the two countries. China continues to claim Taiwan as its own territory and refuses to rule out force. Beijing subsequently advised its citizens to avoid travel to Japan, citing security concerns. Japan's defense minister later visited Yonaguni Island near Taiwan and revealed plans to deploy missiles there. Later, China condemned the move as a deliberate provocation. Now remember, at the heart of these tense relations also lies a long-standing territorial dispute over the Senkaku Islands in East China Sea, known in China as Diaoyu Islands. A similar arrest near those waters in 2010 had triggered a major diplomatic crisis. Economic pressure has also been in the equation. As per reports, China has restricted rare earth exports to Japan, materials that are vital for EVs and defense industries. So will this latest arrest remain merely a maritime matter, or the spark of a larger confrontation between two of Asia's most powerful countries in East Asia go on? From colony to coach. History has turned a full circle. The empire that once ruled India now invites Indian Air Force, not as a student, but as the instructor to train its fighter pilots. For the first time ever, the Indian Air Force will deploy 3 qualified flying instructors to the Royal Air Force Valley, the United Kingdom's premier fast jet training base. At the RAF Valley, Indian instructors will train British pilots on advanced jets such as the Bayhawk T2 and Texan T1. The deployment will initially last 2 years, and the instructors will remain under Indian Air Force command while carrying out duties within the RAF's training system. This milestone follows another historic move earlier this year when an Indian Air Force officer joined the instructional staff at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell, the academy that shapes the next generation of RAF officers. But that's not all. Today, Indian officers serve as instructors at all 3 British military academies. This growing defense partnership gained further momentum after British Prime Minister Keir Starmer signed a military training cooperation agreement with India during his visit to Mumbai in October 2025. The Indian Air Force has steadily expanded its global training footprint. It has trained pilots from countries like Vietnam on the Su-30 platform, supported training exchanges with the United States and France, and conducted joint exercises with major air forces. This latest development signals more than cooperation. It signals strategic trust. It shows confidence in Indian training standards, and it marks a powerful chapter in India's rise from a former colony to a global military force shaping the skies of the future. Moving on, the United States and Taiwan have signed a final reciprocal trade agreement confirming a 15% US tariff rate on imports from Taiwan. That formalizes a January framework deal which had lowered tariffs from the initially imposed 20%. In return, Taiwan has committed to eliminating or reducing tariffs on nearly all American goods. This agreement also grants exemptions on more than 2,000 Taiwanese product items that are exported to the US. The move places Taiwan at par with key Asian export competitors like South Korea and Japan and marks a significant reset in the bilateral trade terms. The deal comes ahead of the expected meeting between Trump and Jinping in April.
Taiwan's reciprocal tariff will be reduced to 15% and without stacking, putting us on an equal footing with major competitors such as Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. It also eliminates the previous disadvantage where, due to the lack of a Taiwan-US free trade agreement, Taiwan's tariffs were significantly higher than those of its competitors.
A major component of this deal is Taiwan's commitment to significantly increase purchases of U.S. goods between 2025 and 29. The January agreement had also included a pledge by Taiwanese companies to invest $250 billion in the United States. Of this, $100 billion has already been committed by Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, and in addition, the Taiwanese government is expected to guarantee another $250 billion in the U.S.-bound investments. The final document states that Taiwan's U.S. representative office will work with American authorities to facilitate further investments in AI, semiconductors, and advanced electronics manufacturing. Under the agreement, Taiwan will immediately eliminate tariffs of up to 26% on many U.S. agricultural imports, including beef, dairy, and corn. Taiwan will also remove non-tariff barriers on motor vehicles and accept U.S. safety standards for autos, medical devices, and pharmaceuticals. This agreement, remember, comes amid a widening U.S. trade deficit with Taiwan. For the first 11 months of 2025, the deficit had surged to $126.9 billion. The deal now awaits approval from Taiwanese parliament, where the opposition holds a majority. All right, with that, we're slipping into a break, but on the other side of Gravitas, we get you a new report that has revealed that Americans are paying for most of Donald Trump's tariffs. And for all of you who want revenge from your ex, a Polish zoo is now giving you that opportunity this Valentine's Day. We get you more details on the other side of the break.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week, creating the maximum impact. Watch
The bonhomie between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu was on display once again as the U.S. president lambasted his Israeli counterpart for not pardoning Netanyahu, who faces serious charges of corruption. When asked whether the Israeli Prime Minister bears any responsibility for the security failures regarding the October 7 Hamas attack, Donald Trump defended him. Instead, he directed his anger towards the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, and called him disgraceful for not pardoning Netanyahu, whom he described as a very good wartime prime minister. In fact, he's also called upon Israelis to shame Isaac Herzog.
And, you have a president that refuses to give him a pardon. I think that man should be ashamed of himself. A pardon over this trial that's going on. The president of Israel, the primary power he's got is the power to give pardons. And he's not, he said he's given it 5 different times, but he doesn't want to do it because I guess he loses his power. I think the people of Israel should really shame him. He's disgraceful for not giving it.
President Herzog has hit back at Donald Trump. He's revealed that a legal opinion on Netanyahu's pardon request is pending at the Ministry of Justice. In fact, he stressed that a decision will be taken without any internal or external pressure. Netanyahu, remember, is the first prime minister in the history of Israel to face criminal prosecution while being in office. He's facing trial in 3 cases on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. If convicted, he faces up to 10 years in prison. In the first case, he's been accused of receiving lavish gifts worth nearly $200,000 US from 2 businessmen in exchange of political favors. He also faces a case for purportedly striking a deal with a newspaper owner to ensure his favorable coverage in return for legislation to slow the growth of a rival publication. Another case pertains to the grant of regulatory favors to a telecom firm. In exchange, a news website controlled by the firm's owner provided favorable coverage of Netanyahu and his wife. But remember, this is not the first time when Donald Trump has advocated Netanyahu's case. During his address to Israel's parliament in October last year, he looked sideways to President Herzog and urged pardon for Netanyahu, leading to huge cheers from lawmakers.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon?
Well, he followed that up with a formal request. In a letter sent to the Israeli president in November, the US president alleged that the cases against the Israeli prime minister are political and unjustified. After Netanyahu formally submitted a pardon request on the 30th of November last year, Israel's opposition was up in arms. The leader of opposition, Yair Lapid, requested President Herzog to turn down Netanyahu's request unless the prime minister admits his guilt, expresses remorse, and withdraws from political life. Netanyahu's move was met by disapproval of a section of Israelis. A number of people staged a protest outside Herzog's residence in Tel Aviv, warning against any possible relief to the Israeli prime minister. Previously, too, Donald Trump has tried to intervene in judicial proceedings abroad. For instance, he's termed the legal proceedings against former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro as a witch hunt. US even imposed sanctions on a Supreme Court judge who oversaw Bolsonaro's trial. The US president jumped to the defense of French leader Marine Le Pen as well when she was found guilty of embezzling European Union funds. US President Donald Trump has revoked federal green vehicle emissions rules, marking the administration's most sweeping climate policy rollback till date.
In 4 years under the Biden administration, the price of a new and used car rose more than 22%, all to facilitate the Green New Scam without achieving any meaningful impact on the environment, but making the car worse. That is why, effective immediately, we are repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond.
He's also withdrawn a landmark scientific determination that provides the legal foundation for regulating planet-warming pollution, a move that significantly reshapes federal climate policy.
The process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry.
The scientific finding, which was first adopted in 2009, enabled the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act of 1963. It led to limits on carbon dioxide, methane, and other heat-trapping emissions from vehicles, power plants, and various industries. The White House called the reversal as the largest deregularization in American history, saying it will make cars cheaper and bring down costs for automakers by $2,400 per vehicle. Environmentalists, however, remain skeptical of the potential cost savings being touted by the Trump administration. Former US President Barack Obama sharply criticized the decision. In a post on social media platform X, the 44th US president warned that overturning the finding would leave Americans less safe and less healthy and weaken efforts to combat climate change. He's argued that the repeal primarily benefits the fossil fuel industry. Analysts say that the immediate impacts will be on US power plants, which in 2009 were largely fueled by coal. The coal industry said this would help delay retirements of aging coal-fired power plants. This new policy will also target methane regulations. Mandatory vehicle emissions or fuel economy standards have been operating in US, Japan and China for at least a decade now. Many nations are speeding up their rate of emissions intensity improvement with successive standards. In 2021, the Indian government had ordered that diesel vehicles, which are more than 10 years old, and petrol vehicles, which are more than 15 years old, will be allowed to ply in the national capital region. China offers car trade-in subsidies. If consumers swap their old cars for a new energy vehicle, they can receive up to $3,000. Shifting our focus now, following a period of relative calm and after 3 years of war, Gazans are now assessing the extent of damages to their historical sites. Across the enclave, Palestinians are reckoning with how to save their monuments and their cultural history from ruins. Take a look.
مشروع حصر الأضرار على كافة مستوى قطاع غزة. كان هناك أكثر من 317 موقع ومبنى أثري تم تدميره بصورة كلية أو أضرار جزئية. من أهم المواقع التي تم تدميرها خلال هذه الحرب مبنى قصر الباشا.
Deep in the void, a cosmic anomaly that defies the rules of physics. Astronomers have found a planetary system that looks wrong almost inside out, and it's forcing scientists to rethink how worlds are born.
The universe is vast beyond comprehension. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, trillions of planets scattered across the dark. And yet, with every new discovery, the cosmos reminds us how little we truly understand. For decades, planetary formation seemed orderly. Close to a star, heat bakes worlds into rock and metal. Further out, colder regions allow gas giants to swell and dominate. It's the architecture we see in our own solar system. Rocky planets inside, gaseous giants beyond. But around a distant red dwarf star named LHS 1903, that neat arrangement falls apart. Using the European Space Agency's Cheops Space Telescope, astronomers identified an exoplanet called LHS 1903e, a dense, rocky world. What startled them wasn't just the planet itself, it was the company it kept. From the star outward, the system lines up in a bizarre sequence. Rocky, gaseous, gaseous, rocky. That pattern shouldn't exist. Models predict that lighter gases accumulate in colder outer zones, forming thick atmospheres and giant planets. Rocky bodies are expected to huddle closer in, where stellar radiation strips away volatile elements. Yet here, a rocky planet sits beyond two gaseous neighbors, like a survivor stranded on the edge. Scientists believe this strange layout hints at a violent past. Planets may have migrated, collisions could have reshaped orbits, massive gravitational interactions might have scattered worlds like cosmic billiard balls. Every time astronomers think they understand the universe, it rearranges the pieces and reminds us that the cosmos plays by rules we are only beginning to decipher.
A new report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York confirms what economists have been saying all along. Americans are paying for almost all of President Donald Trump's tariffs. The finding is simple and straight out of economics. When a country imposes import taxes, it is not foreign governments that foot the bill. It is businesses and consumers at home. According to the New York Fed, nearly 90% of 2025's import taxes were paid by American businesses and consumers. Other independent analysis reached the same conclusion. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that while some businesses are absorbing a small portion of the cost by cutting into their profit margins, about 70% of the tariff burden is being passed directly on to the consumers in the form of higher prices. The Tax Foundation calculates that in real terms, tariffs amounted to an average tax increase of about $1,000 per household in 2025. The White House disputes the broader narrative, arguing that inflation has cooled, corporate profits have risen, and that the president's broader agenda of tax cuts, deregulation, tariffs, and energy expansion is boosting growth. But politically, the pressure is building. In a rare break with the president, a handful of House Republicans recently joined Democrats in a symbolic vote aimed at repealing tariffs on Canada. The measure is unlikely to become law, but it signals growing discomfort even within the president's own party. At the same time, a pending Supreme Court of the United States ruling could determine whether the legal foundation of the tariffs holds up. On paper, the economy appears resilient, job growth continues, and key indicators look solid. But a closer look shows that much of the recent job creation has been concentrated in healthcare, with other sectors showing weaker momentum. The bigger picture is this: while macroeconomic numbers may look stable, many Americans still feel strained by the cost of living. And multiple reports now suggest that a significant share of that pressure can be traced back to tariffs that, despite the political rhetoric, are being paid mostly by Americans themselves. What if kindness could be switched on? What if selfishness could be altered? Now, a new study shows that using electricity can alter the behavior. Scientists may have found a way to briefly change how we treat each other. Our next story has the details of this study. Take a look.
We all face choices every day. Do I take more for myself or share with others? These split-second calls shape families, jobs, and even countries. What if science could tip the scale to kindness? In Switzerland, University of Zurich researchers tested 44 people. Each person was asked to decide how to split an amount of money between themselves and a stranger. Then came the treatment. They used mild electric pads on the scalp. No pain, just a tingle. It hit two areas, one for self-control, one for caring about others. During the study, which is published in the journal PLOS Biology, researchers showed that the stimulation nudged the participants' unselfish preferences, making them consider their partner more when they weighed each monetary offer. In a world shaped by conflict, competition, and inequality, the idea that empathy can be amplified even briefly is as powerful as it is unsettling. It is a temporary cure for greed that raises a terrifying question for the future of social engineering. If we can flip a switch to make a person generous, what happens when someone else holds the remote?
WhatsApp has finally been banned by Kremlin. The Russian internet regulator said the platform had failed to comply with local laws. The ban leaves over 100 million users of the app with little choice except to move to a state-promoted messaging app called Max. WhatsApp has confirmed this ban. The Meta-owned service said that it refused to let the messaging platform become what it called a state-owned surveillance app. WhatsApp was the most popular messaging app in Russia until 2022. That's when Meta was deemed an extremist organization by Russia, and Instagram and Facebook were banned. Some Russians feel the ban took too long coming. There has been pressure on messaging platforms to comply with Russian laws that mandate storage of citizens' data on Russian soil. Earlier this week, Russian authorities restricted access to Telegram, accusing the app of not blocking content, deemed as criminal and terrorist. But remember, Russia is not alone in taking action to block WhatsApp. A number of countries have varying degrees of restrictions on the app, ranging from outright to partial bans and blocking of voice and video calling functions. These include China, North Korea, the UAE, Qatar, as well as Jordan. Countries that have restricted WhatsApp intermittently include Iran, Turkey, Uganda, Cuba, and Egypt. In China, meanwhile, WhatsApp has been blocked since 2017, with most users relying on a domestic platform called WeChat. In North Korea, most Western apps are inaccessible, and WhatsApp is no exception. In the UAE and Qatar, text messaging remains available, but internet-based voice and video calls are restricted. Jordan also has restrictions on making VoIP calls, while Egypt has tried to place similar curbs intermittently. In the US, WhatsApp has been banned from all official devices used by members and staff of the House of Representatives following security guidance issued in June last year. Iran lifted its ban on WhatsApp in 2024, while Turkey and Uganda have both imposed temporary restrictions in the past. Cuba has also curbed access to WhatsApp during widespread protests in 2021. Coming back to Russia, reactions from users have been mixed.
A Russian person is a crafty creature. They'll get around all those blocks. So I don't think it will completely disappear here, because YouTube, for example, is blocked for us too. But everyone watches it. Everything's fine. Anyone who really needs it will find a way around.
Moving on, are pets the best example of unconditional love? A dog's unflinching loyalty towards its owner has now become the inspiration for a new law in Brazil. The story goes back to 2011 when the owner of a brown, long-haired, mixed-breed dog named Bob Covero passed away. However, the pet refused to leave the side of its owner, who has been laid to rest at a cemetery in the state of Sao Paulo. While relatives tried to take Bob back away several times, it always returned to the cemetery. And eventually, Bob was adopted by the cemetery staff, who provided it with a kennel. This dog garnered significant attention in the years to come for accompanying other funeral processions and comforting visitors as well. Tragically, Bob died in 2021 after being struck by a motorcycle. Owing to widespread public demand, the dog was buried alongside its former owner. Now, as a result of a long-standing campaign, the state of Sao Paulo has approved a law allowing pets like cats and dogs to be buried alongside their owners. Until now, pets had to be cremated after their death. The state government stressed that this law recognizes the emotional bond between pets and their human families. Bob continues to be honored. In the wake of a crowdfunding initiative by a local NGO, this loyal dog's statue was installed in the same cemetery where it is buried. Fittingly, the plaque beneath the statue reads, and I quote, "Our tribute and gratitude for your lessons in love and loyalty." Who needs chocolates and roses when you can serve revenge on a platter? This Valentine's, Poland's Orientarium Zoo is letting heartbroken romantics name a cockroach after their ex and then feed it to a meerkat. Yes, you can turn your ex into a meerkat snack now, all in the name of love, or well, the lack of it. The zoo first launched this playful initiative in 2023, and it's back, promising a unique way to turn heartbreak into humor. For little over $15, you can adopt a cockroach, name it after your ex, and receive an electronic adoption certificate. And if you're feeling extra vengeful, well, for $42, you get photographic proof of the insect's destiny. And for the absolute revenge seekers, there's the VIP package. For $84, you get to personally feed the ex, named Cockroach, to a meerkat under zoo supervision. The promotion runs until the 28th of February. And well, Poland is not alone. The San Antonio Zoo in the US also offers a Cry Me a Cockroach fundraiser. It lets you symbolically name a cockroach, rat, or even a wedgie after that special someone who didn't treat you quite right. So for all the jilted lovers out there, forget the roses this Valentine's Day. It's cockroaches, meerkats, and revenge served just right. All right, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. But as always, we'll keep getting you analysis from across the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
As the world celebrates the power of love this Valentine's week, we get you a list of our hand-picked rom-com suggestions. Know all about the viral relationship trends of 2026. And find out who's the biggest superstar in showbiz right now. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Beyond the noise and rhetoric, no election, no ballot issue too small. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. More than just headlines. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION. World is one.
From ski jumpers flying off ramps at the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, electric aircraft that take off vertically and are sent on missions where every second counts, to autonomous drones that fly in swarms. We're getting some air this week on Tech It Out, only on WION at these times.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
On this episode of WION Drive, Miraj rides the small Holly with a big heart. The X440T has a sting in the tail. From the beaches of Goa to the verdant Western Ghats, Miraj takes a ride down memory lane when they rode cruisers up to Kumaon to meet the OG biker. Diksha's design sensibilities are picked by the quirky Kia Ceros. But it's the Volvo EX30's minimalism that really hits the mark. Catch all these stories this week only on WION Drive at these times.
And welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well. From the Himalayas.
Wings this week experience Mahashivratri celebrations across key locations in India.
and Etihad's new loyalty experience in Mumbai. We also bring you winter escape